Welcome to The Middle, the news from both sides, no spin. 3 stories today. Here's what happened. Here's what the left says, what the right says, and here's what the facts actually show. Let's get into it. Story 1, the dinner that became a crime scene. A man walked into Washington Hilton on Saturday night carrying a shotgun, handgun, and multiple knives, and he nearly made it to the ballroom where the president was having dinner. Cole Thomas Allen, a teacher and engineer from Torrance, California, rushed a Secret Service checkpoint at 8:36 p.m. and exchanged gunfire with law enforcement before being tackled to the ground. President Trump and Melania Trump were evacuated. One Secret Service agent was struck, but protected by a bulletproof vest and is expected to be okay. Allen sent a manifesto to family members roughly 10 minutes before the attack, identifying Trump administration officials as his targets ranked from highest to lowest. His guns were purchased legally, and he arrived by train. The left's take? The left's argument begins with a single, uncomfortable truth. Political violence has been escalating against both parties, and every side now needs to take that seriously. Allen's attack raises urgent questions about how easily legally purchased firearms can be transported across state lines with zero security checks. He chose a train specifically because there are no TSA screenings. Democrats have called for a bipartisan commission on political violence. 3 assassination attempts on sitting officials in 2 years is not coincidence. It's a symptom. The right's take? This is what happens when one political party spends years portraying an administration as existential evil. Republican National Committee Chair Joe Gruters called it the inevitable result of a radicalized left that has normalized political violence. Allen was a member of a leftist activist group called the Wide Awakes, donated to the Kamala Harris campaign, and his manifesto read like a grievance list against the Trump administration. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche said, "Gun laws don't need changing. The right sees this as domestic terrorism with a clear ideological fingerprint." The facts? Here's what we know. Allen legally purchased his weapons, a pistol in 2023, a shotgun in August 2025. Both passed federal background checks. He traveled by Amtrak from Los Angeles to Chicago to Washington, where he checked into the Washington Hilton one night before the dinner. His manifesto ran more than 1,000 words and specifically excluded law enforcement as targets. He spared FBI Director Kash Patel by name. He faces charges including using a firearm during a crime of violence and assault on a federal officer, with additional charges, potentially including attempted assassination, expected at Monday's arraignment. Here's the thing neither side is talking about. The Washington Hilton's security let him get farther than anyone is acknowledging. He reached the ballroom staircase. His own manifesto mocked the hotel's security as lax. This is the same hotel where President Reagan was shot in 1981. The security failure isn't a footnote. It's the lead. Bottom line, he was stopped, but not before reaching the stairs. Story 2, the Pope and the firing squad. On April 24th, the Trump Department of Justice announced it would expand federal execution methods to include the firing squad, electrocution, and lethal gas on the exact same day Pope Leo XIV, the first American pope in the history of the Catholic Church, released a video condemning the death penalty as an attack on human dignity. Leo grew up in Illinois, the state that abolished capital punishment 15 years ago. The collision happened in real time, on the same news cycle, in the same country. The left's take? The left sees this as an act of moral regression. Expanding execution methods, particularly the firing squad, is not a policy update. It's a statement of intent. The death penalty is applied disproportionately to Black Americans and the poor. It has claimed the lives of people later proven innocent. And now, with a newly elected American Pope explicitly calling it inadmissible, the administration is doubling down. Catholics make up roughly 20% of American voters. The timing of this, the left argues, reveals exactly where this administration values lie. The right's take? The right's position is clear. The Catholic Church does not set American criminal law. The federal death penalty applies only to the most heinous offenders, mass murderers, terrorists, cop killers, and restoring its functionality is basic accountability. The Biden administration effectively mothballed federal executions for 4 years. Expanding methods ensures the legal system can actually carry out sentences that courts have already handed down. What the Pope believes is his business. What Congress has authorized is a separate matter. The facts? The DOJ document titled Restoring and Strengthening the Federal Death Penalty authorized firing squads, electrocution, and lethal gas, all methods the Supreme Court has found constitutional. As of April 24th, 8 people have been executed in the U.S. in 2026. Since 1976, 1,662 total executions have been carried out. Executions have declined significantly over the past 2 decades and remain concentrated in a handful of states and counties. Pope Leo XIV grew up in the Pilsen neighborhood of Chicago. He addressed at a Paul University event marking 15 years since Illinois abolished the death penalty in his home state. Here's the thing that neither side is talking about. The real reason the DOJ is expanding execution methods has almost nothing to do with ideology. European pharmaceutical companies have refused to sell the drugs used in lethal injection to American prisons for years. The supply chain for existing method has quietly collapsed. Expanding to firing squads in the electrocution isn't primarily a political statement. It's a workaround to a procurement problem that neither party wants to explain out loud. The bottom line? The Pope said life is sacred. The DOJ said sentences will be carried out. The thing they're both not saying is why the method changed. Story 3, Georgia is on fire. 2 wildfires ignited in southeast Georgia last week and within days had burned through more than 40,000 acres and destroyed over 120 homes. The Highway 82 fire in Brantley County started on April 21st, sparked, investigators believe, when a Mylar birthday balloon hit a power line. The Pineland Road fire in Clinch County was apparently started by someone welding a gate. Hundreds of families were forced to evacuate. Governor Brian Kemp declared a state emergency for 91 counties, more than half the state. FEMA approved assistance grants. The fires are still burning. The left's take? The left's argument centers on what made a birthday balloon and a welding spark into a catastrophe. Years of worsening drought driven by climate change. Georgia is experiencing its worst drought in more than 25 years. Spring dryness across the United States has hit a record high level not seen since the U.S. Drought Monitor began keeping data in the year 2000. Without meaningful climate action, these conditions become a new normal. In rural communities, not coastal cities, are the ones losing their homes. The right's take? The right points out that the cause of ignition was human error, not emissions policy. Wildfires have always happened. What matters is how a state responds, and Georgia responded well. Kemp moved fast, FEMA activated, National Guard troops deployed, air assets were in the air. The right also points to the Hurricane Helene debris problem. Enormous amounts of dead timber were left across the southeast after 2024 storms, creating a fuel load that prescribed burn programs, often delayed by regulatory review, might have reduced. The facts? As of the weekend, more than 40,000 acres had burned across both fires. As of mid-April, 69% of Georgia was under extreme drought, up just 1% at the start of the year. The National Drought Monitor classified most of the southeast at severe or worse drought, the highest level on record for spring across 94% of the region from Florida to Virginia. The region needs 12 to 18 inches of rain to exit the current drought, according to federal forecasters. That is not expected before the summer. Here's what neither side is telling you. Hurricane Helene left behind an enormous amount of dead and downed timber across southeast Georgia in 2024. That debris dramatically increased the fuel load for these fires, a documented secondary effect of major hurricanes. The relationship between storm damage and subsequent wildfire risk in the southeast is real, studied, and almost entirely absent from this week's news coverage. The bottom line, the balloon that started the fire was an accident. The conditions that let it spread were years in the making. That's the middle for today. 3 stories, both sides, no agenda. If this is useful to you, share it with someone who's tired of being told what to think. See you next time.